1:38 o'clock.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Guys. It's Wednesday night. It's time to talk weird. Let's see here. We've got a couple things to take care of. First, I want to thank Yergs Radio at yergsradio.com for allowing us on. And, of course, the Parapost Network for allowing us on. And we have a 888-88-YERGZ. It's a toll-free number, 1-888-88-YERGZ, that you can call on your phone pad anytime. Hello, Maria. And let's see who we got in the back here. We got Miss Cheyenne and we got Miss Amanda. How are you, ladies?
Good.
Surviving.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get our guest out here because the show isn't about us. We have a great guest tonight lined up. If I can hit all the right buttons. Rakesh is, I probably just said it wrong, he's got lots of experience with paranormal and supernatural, and we can't wait to talk to him. So let's bring him out. Hello there, sir.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Welcome to the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we want to know all about your spooky, scary things.
Sure. So my name is Rakesh Khanna. I was born in California. I have a biracial family. My father is from Punjab, India, and my mother's from California. And when in my 20s, I moved to India. I went there for graduate school, like the reverse direction migration that everybody else was doing, because I'm a contrarian like that. And met my wife, Rashmi, and got married and stayed there. So for the last 22, 23 years, I've been living in Chennai in the south of India. And in 2008, Rashmi and I started a publishing company. And our first projects were translating Tamil language pulp fiction into English. So Tamil is spoken in the southeast state of India. It's got about like 80 million speakers. And there was this big scene of pulp novels, like horror and detective and adventure novels, a lot of supernatural stuff going on, which were wildly popular. They were really like the best-selling writers in the, well, actually the romance writers, the best-selling, but these guys were sort of, they were some of the best-selling writers in the state and in the language, but they'd never been translated before because they weren't considered literary enough. So that was our first book, was an anthology of Tamil pulp fiction. And with that same translator who worked on that book, we did a book of Tamil folklore, which had a really nice chapter on Peys and Pisases, which are ghosts and demons, basically, of southern India. And that book was by a Tamil folklorist named K. Rajanarayanan, who passed away a few years ago. At the age of 99, he was collecting folk stories his whole life, and he knew a lot of ghost stories. And that sort of sparked my interest. I mean, I'd always been, into Dungeons and Dragons and sort of like monsters and stuff like that growing up, but it sparked my interest in Indian ghosts, which I didn't know much about at the time. And after that, we've done other books with folklorists from different parts of the country. We did a book called Mizo Myths with a folklorist named Sherry Changte from Mizoram, which is way up in the northeast corner by Burma. It's a small state. It's like just 1 million people, but they have a totally different pantheon of boogeymen and creepy supernatural creatures. Like their folklore is amazing. It's completely, it's nutty.
You don't hear much or really any about I feel like you hear a lot about more Japanese and Chinese legends and stuff like that, but I don't know of any out of India.
Yeah, there's like sort of some standard, like sort of mainstream Hinduism has a few monsters that are sort of known, again, from Dungeons and Dragons. I think like the Rakshasa was one that people tend to know, but they know a funny version of it because like in that Gary Gygax's monster manual that came out in 1977, there's a picture of the Rakshasa and he's got like a tiger head. He's like this dapper looking guy in like a robe, and he's smoking a pipe and he's got a tiger head. So then like from that, I think like all these American role-playing games and board games and stuff have a Rakshasa that looks like a tiger-headed man, which is not really what a Rakshasa is in India. And then the Naga, I think a lot of people know Nagas. You guys know Nagas?
Not off
I do not know.
Okay, so Nagas are big in not just in India, but like all over Southeast Asia. So like Nagas are kind of like, there's different versions of Naga stories. There's snake people. Sometimes they're people who can turn into snakes. Sometimes they're snakes. They're cobras who have lived 100 years without biting anybody, so that the poison, the venom in their head turns into this magic jewel, which then grants them shape-shifting powers. There's also like Nagalok, which is like an underworld kind of netherworld place where the Nagas live. So it depends where you go. There's lots of Naga stories. Like Thailand has Nagas and Vietnam has Nagas. Even the Philippines has Nagas. They were all over for a long time. And then the Yeti, which is like everybody knows Yetis. So, but there's a lot of different kinds of Yetis.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like India's got, there's 22 official languages. There's 22 languages that are official at the federal level, and then like at the state level, there's more languages that are official, and there's much more languages that aren't even official anywhere. But there's thousands of languages, and each one of them has its own folklore and their own, list of ghosts and stuff. So it gets really deep.
Oh, absolutely. Now, in the Yeti, we were talking about this backstage earlier. Some people, or I shouldn't say people, I guess some cultures put them actually in their ancestry and look up to them as a higher being. Like, I don't want to say a god, but they're elevated more so.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one so much from. I think that must be Tibetan, which I don't know a whole lot about Tibet. Okay. There's sort of like peripheral Tibetan stuff. Like there's Bhutia language speakers who are kind of like culturally similar to Tibet in some the northern parts of India, and then in the eastern Himalayas, like in Arunachal Pradesh and places like that, which are like really linguistically diverse, like because it's really hilly, right? So like in every valley you've got a different language and stuff. Okay. They like every tribe has a different Yeti, and there are some that are sort of respected and you do rituals towards them and stuff, and there's some that are just really evil. There's a lot of like sex crazy female Yetis that abduct people. That's a common story.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So there's succubus Yetis.
Yeah, but not like often not really that smart. Like you think of succubuses as kind of sinister and intelligent. These are kind of like
this is just a Yeti that's like, nah, I'm getting the
yeah, just grab the guy by his hair and pull him out to the cave and use him.
Horny Yeti.
See, I always
this show took a twist.
I always interpret it as like a Yeti or like an abominable snowman to be just like a snow Bigfoot.
That's kind of like that. There's that old Christmas special, right?
Yes.
That's kind of like the American version of the Yeti. Was that guy from the Rudolph show?
What was his name?
Bumble.
Bumble. That's right.
Bumble. That's right.
My
Yeah.
mom collects all sorts of like vintage Rudolph stuff. So she's got 50 million Bumbles and Yukon Cornelius.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
These creatures, speaking just to the Bigfoot, are in every culture. We've seen them in paintings and drawings that go back to early civilization, I guess is be the right way to say.
Early,
how can these creatures not exist and so many people don't believe in them. That's what I don't understand. It would almost be foolish to, like us saying that there's nobody that lives on another planet. We don't know that. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, there might be something out there. I think, like, there's that there's Gigantopithecus blacki. Is that that's
it's supposed
some
to
branch
be
of the human family tree that was around fairly recently, like, like in Asia, I think like 50,000 years ago, there's fossils. So that's not that long ago. Like, people could, even if there's not any left, like, you can imagine that that's still in the cultural memory, or there's stories about meeting those things or something like that. I'm not sure if I have the year right, and those things were big. Like, they were like 9 feet tall and stuff. So, yeah, maybe there's some of those out there. I don't know. But then there's all these supernatural, like, a lot of the Yetis in the Himalayas have supernatural powers, right? Like, there's a thing in the Eastern Himalayas, there's a common thing where if you look up at the Yeti when it's coming at you, you're in trouble. Like, you're gonna get eaten. But if you look at its feet, it will shrink, and eventually it'll get so small that you can, like, take it, pick it up.
It immediately was like, okay, so it reminds me of the what color bear is whether you run, whether you fall to the ground, or whether you're just screwed, or like, okay, great white shark is coming at you, you just punch it in the nose.
Right. Yeah, little tricks too. That's let's see, that thing is called Tiso Jonding, I think, or the Mande Burung. These are different Yeti versions from the northeast of India. Yeah.
If I ever happen upon Bigfoot, that will be the first thing I try.
Yeah.
And these stories get carried from generation to generation. And some of them, I think, are just stories, like you said. But at some point, it's kind of like there had to be something to it. So
there was truth that started there somewhere.
Yeah, there's some, in researching this book, there were some really weird ones. Like, there's a story that from Kumaon, which is like kind of like just north of Delhi. Like, it's in like the heart of North India, right? The foothills of the Himalayas in North India. And that same ghost, like almost every aspect of that ghost is there in Malaysia, in Malaysian folklore, and nowhere in between. And it's like, how did that get there, right? Like is that just some really good storyteller from a long time ago, like, made that journey or something, or is there's really some sort of, like, power that manifested itself in two different places, like, because it's pretty far away, and like totally different language families and everything. So it's like, it was pretty weird.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then also you mentioned earlier about demons and ghosts and stuff like that. In every culture, and I don't know if it's just necessarily religious cultures, but in every culture, there's some kind of good and bad, an angel or a devil. So they have to exist too, I would think, if they're in every culture. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like Indian religion tends to not be so binary as Western stuff a lot of the time. Like, you don't have that good and evil as clearly drawn. It gets complicated. Like, okay, so this is I'm going back to Dungeons and Dragons again. So, like, actually, like, my father was not a religious guy, and he never taught us much about Hinduism or anything. Like, he called himself a Hindu, but we never went to temple. We didn't do puja in the house. Like, I'm a Hindu means I believe, sort of vaguely believe, that I'm going to be reincarnated, but we're not going to talk about it. But the first time that he ever sort of got upset about anything was when I was in the monster. No, not in the Monster Manual. It's in Deities and Demigods, which is this other, like, old Dungeons and Dragons book where they kind of, I don't think you could publish that book today. It's like terribly culturally appropriative. They have got, like, Finnish myths and Norse myths and Egyptian myths and everybody's gods, and they give them hit points and armor class, and, like, you can play them, you can fight them, or you can pray to them or have them
lose their mind now about all that.
Yeah, right. So the Hindu myths section had Kali. So I don't know if you guys might, I mean, she's a pretty well-known goddess over here, right? I think there's that that woman who used to be married to Seal dressed up as her one Halloween. You know that lady?
Heidi
Yeah.
Klum.
Yes.
I forget her name.
Heidi Klum, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. But you know, she's blue and she's got the tongue sticking out and she's got lots of arms.
The 50 million arms, yeah.
Yeah, and the skirt made of people's legs and the skull necklace and everything. So
Just
so
a
she's
real bad MFer right there.
yeah, so in the Deities and Demigods, Dungeons and Dragons book, they had her alignment, you know, there's like chaotic good, chaotic neutral, all those lines. So she was listed as chaotic evil. And my father had a problem with that. He's like, how can they say Kalima is evil? Like, this is like this. He got mad at the book. And this is like the first time I've ever seen him get upset. Like, you know, talk about religion and all.
Like, who wrote this?
Really?
Who wrote this? They don't know anything.
It's totally wrong. So that's interesting, right? Because she's got the skulls and she's got the severed legs and she's standing on guys. But she's a slayer of demons, right? She's super violent, but she's good. So and that way, I think similarly, like there's a lot of supernatural entities in Indian folklore that are, it's you know, you can't really say, oh, maybe they worship that thing, right? They're praying to this entity, but maybe they're praying to it so that it doesn't eat them. You know, like I'm giving, you know, it's my God, but it's also my, you know,
it's more praying to it out of fear.
Yeah, there's a lot of entities like that. Like we have to propitiate that goddess or else she's gonna get pissed.
Yeah.
Have you met my wife?
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting concept to be, because I don't feel like you see that a lot, of praying to it to keep it away from you.
It's true.
I think that's very interesting.
And then Marie in the audience asks, what about the difference between demons that fell from heaven before the original humans?
They have much less eyes.
They were taller.
I'm trying to think of something in Indian mythology like that.
Yeah, because, well, she's probably getting to the fact that a lot of people believe here in this continent that they bred with humans and that could possibly be what is now Bigfoot. What's the name for that? I'm drawing a blank.
What's the name for
the being that bred with the angels or the fallen angels?
I don't know this. This is a thing in Christian mythology, or?
Yeah, part of it. Part of it is now getting to the Bigfoot part.
Yeah, I think that's where they get into the little bit of a stretch part of it. But yeah, the angels fell from heaven, and obviously they were no longer angels, and they bred with humans. And then supposedly that's the Noah with the flood to kill them all. But supposedly they didn't all get killed, and there were some that survived. And those are what people are classifying. Some people, a lot of people, you'll have the camp that here in the states where Bigfoot's flesh and blood, you could shoot him. And then you have the other camp that it's something from outer space.
The Nephilim. It was
Nephilim.
Yeah.
The Nephilim. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. So a lot of people believe that Bigfoot is Nephilim. And then, like I said, there's another camp, and they love to fight each other. They say that he's from another continent, another dimension or another planet, that he's interstellar and has something to do with ET.
Wow, that's fun.
Which, yeah, that it gets deep, and you get everybody arguing their point, but the fact of the matter is we don't know. I mean,
there's like a goth band or something, right? Nephilim. I kind of remember this from.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
All right.
This is Lucifer and the Lilith. I'm not sure what the Lilith is.
Lilith is the before Eve.
Yeah.
The apocryphal first woman. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't know anything. Don't know anything about that. Oh, Amanda, you went crazy colored there for a second.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Well, you know, and while we're talking about, what do you think about extraterrestrials, beings from outer space?
I'm sure there are some. Space is really far away. I mean, like other planets are really far away. It seems hard to get places, but there's also probably technology we don't understand very well.
Sure. In the cultures, is there anything like that, or is that just a?
There are a few sky beings who are maybe, possibly from other planets. Let's see. There's an interesting thing about. This is actually from Africa. There's a thing about the Nomo. Have you heard of Nomos?
No, sir.
So this is a supernatural being in the mythology of the Dogon people of, I think it's Mali, in like Western Africa, north of Nigeria, right? So I think I got this right. I'm not an expert on Africa, but this myth has sort of moved to India in one place. There's this famous fort in Rajasthan. It's called Chittorgarh Fort. My Hindi pronunciation is pretty bad. And people tend to call this thing like the Great Wall of India. Like, it's not nearly as big as the Great Wall of China, but it's pretty impressive, huge fort from a long time ago. And there is a tower called the Vijay Stambha. And in this tower, there is supposed to be an extraterrestrial being. And it lives at the top of this. I think it lives at the bottom of the stairs. This whole thing about if you walk up the stairs, it'll follow you. But somehow this got mixed up with this African myth. So some people think that thing is a Nomo. And the Nomos themselves are like these. They're kind of like they're made of some weird material. They're blue, but they're kind of invisible sometimes. And they're the ripped up shards of some much bigger extraterrestrial being. It's complicated.
Out of all your research and all these things, which one's the scariest to you?
Let's see. So there's this one small state called Sikkim, which is it's kind of in between Nepal and Bhutan, if you can think of the map. Mm-hmm. It was an independent country until 1975. It joined India late. And the native tribe there have these beings called Moong, which there's like a lot of them. Like, according to them, there's many more Moong in Sikkim than there are humans. Like, they're everywhere, like under every leaf and hole. There's some kind of Moong. They live in the sky. They live in the everywhere. And they're pretty depraved. like those things are pretty scary. There's some of them that just, they get taste for human meat, and sorry, say it again. Yeah.
Looking for some little human snacks.
And there's weird stories, like after they eat the person's soul, the person will be missing for a day, and then it'll come back and tell the story of how it was abducted, and then immediately collapse dead. Like, oh wow. Like, it'll take your soul, but it'll send you back to tell the story of how it got you.
Just to tell the story of how you died, and then you're done.
Right.
Yeah. Don't eat at Tom's Diner.
Some savages.
Yeah.
But I like Moong stories. They're scary. There's lots of good Moong stories.
Okay, tell us one. Enlighten us with some there.
Let's see. I don't know. Let's see.
The reason I ask is we always drill our guests about Bigfoot because that's what we're mostly fascinated with. But it's so interesting to me to hear stories from other areas, other cultures that we don't normally get.
Never heard of.
So there is actually one of the Moong is kind of a Bigfoot. So there's a Jamfi Moong, which is basically like a Yeti, and I think this is common to other Yeti myths too, where it's they respond to whistling. They'll come, like if it's bad luck to whistle, because the Jamfi Moong will come find you and take you. So there's a famous story about this guy who I think he's like a shepherd, or he's herding some animals up in the mountains, and he starts playing flute, and the Jamfi Mung finds him and kind of falls in love with him, this she yeti, and keeps coming every night and making him, like, forcing him to play flute all night, and he can't sleep, and he's wasting away and stuff. And finally he cooks up a plan. He notices that the Jamfi Mung is like, when he puts the flute down, the Jamfi Mung tries to play the flute and imitate him. Like the Jamfi Mung tends to imitate things he's doing. So he devises this plan where he gets a bunch of butter, and he does this dance where he rubs butter all over himself. And then he goes to the fire and he takes a torch and he kind of like holds the torch close to himself. And then the Jamfi Mung imitates him and does the same thing, rubs butter all over her furry body, and then dances with the torch and sets herself on fire and runs off into the mountains and doesn't bother him again.
That did not end how I was anticipating.
What were you expecting?
Right?
Well, you start getting into he puts the flute down and starts rubbing butter all over himself.
Yeah.
Get attacked.
I was told not to go to certain places.
As long as we can make it
She's like,
FM
"All
friendly.
right."
And for those children listening, if you don't run, stop, drop, roll. So
Initially, I was like, "Is he thinking she's gonna grab him?" And he's like, "Oh no, can't. Covered in butter."
That's where the album "Slippery Word Wet" come out from. There's
also a pretty good story of how the Hmong were created.
Okay, how were they
created? So there's the creator goddess, and she creates these two beings. One which is made out of the snow of Kanchenjunga, which is like the third highest mountain in the world, and the other one, I think they're both made out of snow. So she makes a woman and a man, and she expects them to live as like brother and sister, but they fall in love and like are secretly seeing each other. So they can't, when her name is Nazong Nyu. So when Nazong Nyu gets pregnant, she has to hide the baby from the creator goddess. So she gives it to her, to the guy, and he goes and hides the baby. He just throws the baby in this cave. And they have 7 kids, which they abandon like that. And finally, like in the eighth kid that they have, they like come clean to the creator goddess, and they say, okay, we've been living together and this is our kid. And that's the first human. But these other 7 abandoned children who are left in the cave survive somehow and become the Mung. So these are actually the elder brothers of humanity who are jealous because we are sort of like, the accepted children.
They were thrown in a cave.
They were thrown in a cave, and they have to live on the margins. So, and then the king of the Mung is this Lasso Mung Pano, who there's this great like story where he becomes this giant kind of like bat dragon thing and like flies down over the valley and eats everybody and has these terrible shrieks that melt people, and it's very cinematic.
It's like, all right, is Smog 2.0?
The Marvel Universe could use that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, okay, so we got to the point of it being the 8th kid. How did said creator goddess not notice anything until they came clean?
Yeah, it's kind of an absent parent creator goddess.
She's just like, oh, I look, oh, okay, oh, well, all right, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about stuff like that. I've been reading a lot of Norse here lately, and there's some, I don't want to call them strange, but unique things that I had never heard of. So, but there is always a story about the first 2 people or first 2 creatures. You always find that. So,
yeah, there's a lot of these stories of you get a lot of these stories of like the 3 brothers. One is the ancestor of humans, one is the ancestor of the animals, and one is the ancestor, or often the tiger. One is the ancestor of the humans, one is the ancestor of the tiger, and the other is the ancestor of the spirits. That's a common thing in a lot of tribes.
I was about to be like, are we getting into the story of the Deathly Hallows here?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's kind of like that, huh?
Yeah. I was like, oh, three brothers. Is this where we're going? Which one got the wand? Which one got the stone?
Well, in what are some of their special powers that they have? These gods and goddesses that are from these different cultures.
Special powers. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of shapeshifters. Like Rakshasas can shapeshift all the time. I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking, you asked that question and I immediately started thinking about what can't they do. Like there's weaknesses, right? Like there's that thing about being afraid of iron. Like that's a really common one. That's like all over, like not just Hindu folklore, but like Muslim folklore and tribal folklore and stuff, like fear of steel, like and mustard seed.
What's the significance of the steel?
I don't know. Like in Muslim folklore, like the jinn are made of fire. Like there's some different kind of fire that forms their body, and so if you cut them, they burn up. Like the fire inside them escapes and they kind of combust. So they have this fear of iron blades from that. But I don't know, like you get the same thing, the fear of iron in Hindu mythology, and I've never heard the thing with fire. And even in lots of like non-Hindu tribes of India, like the thing where they're scared of iron. Mm-hmm. You'll see a lot of Punjabis will wear this little steel bracelet. It's like this one little typical steel bracelet. It's like some people wear it without thinking about it being an anti-ghost thing, but one of the explanations for why you have to wear that is an anti-ghost thing.
Interesting. I never heard that. And what were you going to say about the mustard seed?
Yeah, mustard seed is also like a ghost warder offer in a lot of parts of the country. If you have a little bag of mustard seed, they won't bother you. There's a thing called the Bak. This is from like Bengal, like around Calcutta and Assam and places like that. There's a Bak. There's another name for it. Some people call it a dot or a Bak. These are like fish-loving ghosts. They hang out in marshes and they like to steal fish. And they can grow really tall. They're like kind of Slender Man, kind of like they grow to these really like skinny, tall people, and they'll stalk behind you and steal your fish.
But that's all they want, they can have it.
Yeah, it's not always all they want. They kill people too. So the other thing that they do is if they abduct you, they will turn you upside down and bury your head in the mud and kill you like that. So people will find you like, upside down in the mud, suffocated to death. That's the
I'm not a fan of that one.
Being waterboarded with mud.
Yeah, it's not so great. So those guys, they have this, like, they call it every Indian who's translated it, I don't speak Bengali, but they call it a spectral bag. And they've got a spectral bag which they keep usually like under their armpit. It's like this, and it's made of something which is not like normal matter. And if you steal that bag and you keep it in a big pile of mustard seed, you've got that thing under your control.
Interesting.
And you can kind of like make it do your bidding.
That could be bad too.
You have to like whisper in the bag, like, "Hey, go rob that McDonald's for a Happy Meal." Oop! All right, there it goes.
No, Cheyenne, you feed it pickles. That's where this all began. All the things that look pickles are these evil creatures. So
yeah, and they love them, so now they do my bidding.
The garlic ones.
Sorry, we sidetracked there. Cheyenne has the thing for pickles. So
yeah, like cucumbers or like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll ask you. Do you eat Chick-fil-A? Is there Chick-fil-A anywhere in your travels?
I've never eaten there. I've seen it.
Okay. But I was just going to ask because they get served with a pickle on a piece of chicken. And I was going to say, what do you throw the? I mean, if I've got one, I'm going down the road. It goes out the window before I hit the interstate. So
really, all right.
Yeah, I'm not a pickle person. So
have you ever had Indian pickle? Like, It's usually not cucumbers, like other pickled stuff.
No, I gotta say I have
They
not.
have, like pickled cabbage.
Yeah, there's lots of different pickle. You get like bitter gourd pickle, or like they make meat pickles too. In Kerala, they do beef pickle. You have it with whiskey. It's like
Oh,
Oh, wow.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
that sounds right
Yeah.
up.
excellent.
that's up my alley, that's for
Yeah.
sure. That was one nice thing when we traveled. I was a flight paramedic and we went around the world. Every now and then we would get different cultures, different types of food. And sometimes we would question, what am I eating? And we had handlers because we were just visiting for 24 hours. They'd be like, it's better not to ask. Okay.
Do you like it? All right, then that's enough.
Will the whiskey
not
kill
like
the
it,
bad part?
Right.
Well, in your research, did you have any personal encounters with any beings or entities?
I haven't.
You haven't?
It's a little boring.
Okay.
I've not met anything. I like reading about them. I like hearing the stories, but I've not met anything yet.
Have you tried?
I haven't really. My son keeps trying. He and his cousins are constantly making like little weird patterns on the ground and lighting candles and chanting things. As far as I know, they haven't summoned anything yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
May not want to. Depends
Yeah.
on what it is.
Yeah, I guess you got to be careful what you wish for.
Just make sure you take up the welcome mat.
Right.
In any of the cultures, have you heard anything about I'm learning a lot about metaphysical properties of like crystals.
I'm gonna say that didn't come up too much in my book. There's the thing. It's like more organic stuff. It's a lot of stuff about different kinds of plants, different kinds of leaves have special properties.
That's my
like,
jam.
Yeah, like roots, different kinds. There's a bunch of different kinds of ginger that grow in the northeast of the country, and like a lot of those have like there's special magic with each kind of ginger. Yeah, I don't know. Not so much about crystals that I've found. I know. Let's see. Okay, carnelian. You know that stone?
Mm-hmm.
So that's supposed to be a good one for binding jinn.
Okay.
Yeah. That's probably not Indian in origin. I think that's probably an Arabian myth. But like, yeah, if you want to try to bind a jinn and get it to do what you want, you try to trap it in carnelian stone. I think like there's more stuff in wisdom folklore about stones, which I don't know a lot of that stuff too well. There's this thing about the Kareen. Have you ever heard of the Kareen? Or the Hum, they call it Kareen is Arabic and Hamzad is Urdu, which is like Urdu is like the language in India spoken by a lot of Muslim people. It's like Hindi but with a lot of like Arabic and Persian words. So in Urdu folklore, you call this thing the Hamza. That's kind of like the astral body. It's like your other self. Everybody's born with this like astral self, which is like, I think some people think it's a jinn and some people don't. Like there's like theological disputes about that. Like is your Hamza the jinn or is it just like, is it some other entity? But it's also kind of evil. Like it's a little bit like like the devil on your shoulder trying to get you to do bad stuff. And if you can master your Hamza, if you can like
so then you can master the little devil on your shoulder to have it go do your bidding.
Yeah, but I think only if you have done that, then you're a prophet. Like only Muhammad and Jesus are the people who have done that. Like well, never mind then. But there's a bunch of crystal magic involved in trying to tame that thing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only ask because my wife keeps throwing these rocks at me. So
Those aren't crystals, Glenn. They're just rocks.
We need to introduce you to gravel.
As long as she doesn't do it while
yesterday.
As long as she doesn't do it while I'm on camera, so
No,
I'll have
please.
to introduce the safe word.
please.
Oh gosh.
Rakesh, how many of these translations or how many of these books have you published in total?
Yeah, we do some like small little zines and things. I think like not including that, it's probably around 20, 25 books.
Oh
Okay.
wow.
And
That's
they're not all
amazing.
folklore. Like 3 or 4 of them are folklore. The other ones are like translations from Pulp Fiction and even some just weird writing in English. And these aren't all by me, right? The Ghost, Monsters, and Demons book is by me. The others are by other people. And we have 2. I'm gonna plug our upcoming things. We have two things that are coming out in December that I'm excited about. One is the Blaft anthology of Gujarati pulp fiction, which is a new language for us. We haven't translated from that language before. Gujarati is spoken on like the west coast of India, on the Arabian Sea, and we found this young translator who got really into it, went through all these old magazines, like these great, really crazy old pulp magazines from the 70s and 80s and 90s with these really funny stories. There's some, a lot of detective stuff. There's some black magic stories. There's some ghost stories. A lot of stories about the Kavis. Kavis is like a Gujarati headless ghost. So some really nice pulp stories there. Sorry?
I was going to say, okay, so Indian headless horseman. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, the horse, like I think Rajasthan has a lot of like headless. It has the headless horseman ghosts. These guys just hang around tombs. They're just like headless guys that hang around tombs. So
that'll be me.
How do you plan on losing your head?
It's just gonna fall off by itself at that point.
You're actually going to lose your head.
Yes. Well, this is where I used to like to hang out. Can't find my head, so who wants to talk? Oh, I can't talk. I ain't got a head.
Wendell says, I don't know gin. I'm talking about Glenn. Sportcat doesn't know gin, but is well versed in bourbon and scotch. Not so much scotch, but maybe a little bourbon. So
just a smidge.
I can tell you when you're traveling in other countries, do not use the ice with the Johnny Walker Black. It doesn't kill things. Bad experience, but I was in Peru. Thought, oh, alcohol will kill that. Yeah, it didn't work. So, well, have you ever come across any like graphic novels, like comic books type things that you've translated?
Yeah, we have a few graphic novels on our list. Actually, there's only one which is translated, and that's translated from Japanese. It's a manga. It's by this guy Yukichi Yamamatsu, who is he's like a senior mangaka. Like I think he must be 70 plus now. Who came to India like at the age of like 58. He'd never been out of Japan before, and he had this weird plan, like I'm gonna go to Delhi and sell manga and like spread manga culture in India. And he didn't know any Hindi and he didn't know any English, and he got cheated and he got robbed, and he had this sort of hilariously terrible experience, and then wrote this really funny manga about it called Stupid Guy Goes to India, which is like, yeah. So we translated that from Japanese into English and published it in India, and like a lot of Indians loved it. Like, yeah, he's got his rate.
If you're like, oh, that was just like the guy I saw the other day.
Actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's a funny book.
So how many languages do you speak?
Like one.
What? Okay.
I tried
all your travels.
So I mean, I lived in Chennai for like 22 years, and my Tamil is so hard. It's just a brutally difficult language. It's like people call it the oldest language. I mean, there's nothing like the oldest language, but there are like 2,000-year-old books that people can still read. You know, it's got that long literary tradition that like people are still connected to. It's like if you could pick up Beowulf and like just read it like it was nothing. Like it's like, people like, dude, there's that old literary tradition. So it's like, it's bizarre because there's all this slang and like modern way of speaking, but then people will just kind of like throw out this line, which is like from this 2,000-year-old piece of poetry that everybody knows. And you're like,
I guess that would be like us just trying to on the daily quote Shakespeare.
Yeah, except
Right.
Shakespeare 400 years ago. This is like, it's really, so it's got all these,
Shakespeare, but like 10 times worse.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if did you ever like study a language with like case endings? Like you ever do Latin or Greek or something? Like this, it's got
A
like
little bit of Latin.
genitive and dative and accusative. Like it's got all those case endings with the nouns and the conjugations. I struggled.
Spanish was enough for
Yeah.
me with trying to figure out the male and the female words. I couldn't. I would just. I'm done.
The same with Italian. Yeah.
The teacher told me you're going to speak redneck and that's it, son, and failed me.
Right.
So, I think she was right. So
yeah, I have like basic getting around conversational Tamil, and my Hindi, which was my dad's language. Like I didn't grow up with it because I grew up in California.
Uh-huh.
Tried to learn a little bit with my grandma and cousins and stuff, but even my Hindi is quite bad. What I can do is I can read the script. So I'm like, I can't talk well, but I can read Hindi. I don't always know what it means, but I can sound it out. I can read Tamil. I can even read a little bit of Telugu and Malayalam, and they all have different scripts. So like my wife is a Tamilian who grew up in other parts of the country. So she speaks Tamil but doesn't read it. So if we need to read Tamil together, like I have to say it and she has to tell me what it means.
At least you got each other for that.
Yeah.
That's a great couple.
Yeah.
well, still a translation, so yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and it's a question I've always, a lot of these, I'm trying to read, what is it, Poetic Edda right now?
Oh, yeah.
It's very hard.
Snorri Snorlason. What is this? Snorri Snorlason?
Yeah, and it's very difficult, but I'm trying. But I've always wondered, who are these translators that translate from one to the other, and how much of it do we lose with each one? I mean, some stories, folk stories or whatever, you'll hear, but others, it's like, how do we know?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that can be traced back to, religious texts too, like the Bible, for example. With
absolutely.
Many different translations. How much do we lose in the process? Like a perpetual written version of telephone.
Well, and they say even then, and I'm not trying to get religious, but they say there's lost chapters of it. So,
yeah.
I mean,
I'm sure that spreads more than just Christianity as well.
Totally, yeah. Like, I mean, that's totally the same deal with Hindu scripture. Like, there's different versions of it, and you look at old manuscripts, and there's like, chapters missing or other stuff that's not in the standard version. And a lot of the times, it's like if you look at what has become like the standard version for modern Hinduism, and actually that's some version which was put together by the British, which is like, it's like, what? Like,
wait a second, why was your hands in the pie?
Right, exactly.
The Roman army with Christianity. I mean, which is now, the Roman army is now considered Catholicism. So I don't know. Maybe they're hiding these great things in the Vatican and we'll never find them.
The Apocrypha, right? Isn't that what you call that?
Shoot, you can't even take pictures outside the Vatican without somebody trying to arrest you for it.
Yeah. Well, that guy had a book that was, I can't remember the title of it.
Yeah,
we had an author on that was doing it basically.
The Pope's Butcher.
The Pope's Butcher.
He was outside the Vatican taking a picture with the book when
holding
somebody came
book.
out.
Yeah, what a good idea. He got held for a little bit of time there by, I don't know what the Vatican police are, but he got held for detained for a while they ran through Interpol.
What was he holding?
He wrote a book called The Pope's Butcher.
Okay.
And he was the author, and he was out in front of the Vatican having somebody do professional photography for the book.
Okay.
Well, because there's a lot of there did happen to be a smallish amount of crapping on the Vatican in the book.
Okay.
Just a little, right?
Just a smidge.
But yeah, he got held until Interpol could clear him. They were like, "Why are you doing this?"
They couldn't figure out any other reason or come up with anything to keep him, so they had to let him go.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, just don't come back here again, okay? Don't come back.
He's been banned.
Not many people can say they've been banned from the Vatican, though.
That's true. That's true. I've been kicked at a lot of places, but not that high. So, The King James was changed so you can get a divorce. I have no idea if that's true or not. So, but
Oh, I've heard that before. Yeah.
well, I think King James changed it to his liking. I think what a lot of people refer to. So,
there was a page I ran across on Facebook of a guy talking about like I'm pretty sure he was originally on TikTok, but it was like the top however many of like the scariest books out there, and he was talking about the original King James version, and that's when he was talking about the Malus Maleficara. I know that's not it, but it's something to that effect. Same gentleman who did the Pope's Butcher was talking about that on there too. But
it's like a grimoire or something. It's like a
it was the Catholic's book of how to handle witches, ghosts. They pretty much put all of their secrets into this one book.
Okay.
Even including all of their BS into it.
Right.
So it's incredibly hard to find. When I was like, well, it's y'all's stupid fault for putting it in a book to begin with. But it's very interesting, and I believe the Pope's Butcher is talking about that because the main guy who the book is about was instrumental in writing that book.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
something to definitely look into.
These things are popular in India, like the Lesser Key of Solomon and stuff like that. You guys know those books? Yeah, like that.
Mhm.
That's translated into like every Indian language and still sells well.
Wow. Now, you don't take like modern day books and translate? That's not your purpose. Like the New York Times bestseller list, you don't do anything like that, I assume.
Yeah, not like really cutting edge, but a lot of the pulp writers that we've translated, they're still working. Some of those are pretty recent. There's one guy named Rakesh Khanna who's from a city called Coimbatore in the south of India. He's about, I think he's got to be like 77, 78 years old. And he has been publishing 3 novels a month for the last 52 years.
Good Lord.
Right.
A lot of work.
Yeah. So, I mean, and yeah, he's incredibly prolific and he just keeps coming out with them and he's not stopping. And he's got this incredible style where you can tell he's making up the plot as he's writing it, but it's still fun. You know, it's like he'll start in, there's a murder and there's a house and there's this character and then there's some other weird thing which happens somewhere else and this house and then out in the country, you know, there's this coconut plantation and this guy's in debt. And then he's figuring out how he can make these 3 stories come together in some kind of climax. And you can kind of like tell him, you know, tell how he's trying to work out the solution. And then it finishes and it's really satisfying.
That's an interesting writing process.
Yeah, but his popularity kind of fell a little bit when everybody got televisions. But before everybody had a TV, it was the thing. You know, you'd have a Rakesh Khanna novel on your bus ride, and
that makes me feel a little bit better about my writing because I feel like that's how I write too. And then I gotta get like, oh, well, I changed this so much farther along. Now I gotta go back here and change this part.
Are you a novelist? You've written some stuff, or
it's just, you know, for my own enjoyment. Hopefully, it'll be more than that at some point. But
okay,
I have a feeling the first thing I'll end up getting out is my kid's book.
All right.
Well, it's better than nothing. Yeah. Do you publish any children's books?
There's only one that's possibly a children's book, which is a collaboration between my wife and this artist named Sham, which is called Kumari Loves a Monster. So it's like a romantic picture book about South Indian women who are in love with monsters. and they do sort of like typical Indian date things, like they go paddle boating in the lake, or they go see she goes to see a movie with this big tentacled creature, and they make Indian snacks in like a traditional kitchen, and so it's just like every page has like, you know, this romantic couple doing something fun, and the other page is a little poem.
Well, that's
cool. Little woman, really huge Bigfoot, both in matching aprons, like cooking on the
stove. It's a different monster every page. So there's like, you know, there's a kind of like 6-footed like bantha creature that she goes and has a snowball fight with, and there's like, I don't know.
That's cute. I like that.
So that did pretty well. A lot of people like that book.
Any Mothman in that one? So
Mothman, well, let's see. There's something that has wings, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, before we let you get out of here, where can everybody find you, and how to get in touch with you?
So we're on blaft.com, BLAFT.com, and you can find all our books and stuff there. We've also got some of the books. The Ghost Monsters and Demons has been published in the U.S. by Watkins, so that's available at like Barnes and Noble, and other chains and stuff like that. It's got a Penguin Random House distribution here. So the other stuff all has to come from India. It's a little tricky. But we're also running a Kickstarter campaign right now for the Blaft book of anti-caste speculative fiction, which is kind of like a bunch of science fiction and fantasy and magical realist writers trying to like write against the caste system, which is a really cool project I'm super excited about.
Awesome.
Okay. Very good. You have to send me the information. I will put that in the post notes with the links and stuff if you got it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Shoot that to either me or Shay, and we'll get it in there, because we want to support everybody that comes on our show, because we appreciate your time. So, I mean, you're a world traveler and you took time out for us, so we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for coming on, and make sure to tell your wife when you're translating that you appreciate it, because she'll throw rocks at you. So
I got you. All right.
All right, brother. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. We will see you soon.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. I love it. Oh, wait a minute. Let me change this picture. This is kind of weird. I gotta fix this. There we go. That's better. That was great. You know, you don't know what's in other cultures. I mean,
I really feel like it was like part of what I had said to him. I feel like the only real reason we know more about, like, say, that kind of stuff in like China or Japan or Korea is really from horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not widely. It's not widely talked about, and I had just not too long ago found a map that somebody had done of all the different cryptids and whatnot that are in Ireland. And
I hadn't seen that.
I was like, I didn't know about any of this.
No.
Right.
We're learning about all of them in different cultures. All right, let me hit a button real quick, and then our next guest will be right here. I gotta find the button to push, though.
Who's got the button?
Let's get ready to rumble!
I'm Miranda Maverick, and when I'm in fight camp, I never listen to the Sportcat podcast.
And we're back. Welcome. All right, let me push a button here. Our next guest, Joel, is here. And welcome, Joel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you all doing?
We're doing great. Hey, welcome to the show. You have some interesting books. Tell us about. Oh, you got comic books behind you too. Wait a minute, I'm even more interested.
I was like, wait. He's got Creature of the Black Lagoon. Yes, please.
Yeah, it's actually one of the old billets from when the movie premiered. I got it at Pike Place Market in Seattle. Probably 20 years ago, I found it, and I hadn't even seen the movie at the time. And now, yeah, well, actually, it wasn't. It was only like $20, and now I watch the movie religiously every year. So I love it.
You know, and it's funny. I can't stand black and white, but I could watch that all day. I
Yeah.
love it.
Oh.
Yeah. Pretty cool movie.
It is. So yeah, so tell us about some of your stuff, because well, you've got some good ones coming out too, or a good one coming out too.
Yeah. So where do I begin? So I write horror. So Creature of the Black Lagoon is totally on brand. My latest release is in a short anthology, kind of an afternoon read of pulp fiction, horror, and dark fantasy stories called It Came from the Trees and Other Violent Aberrations. You can find it on Amazon. And it's 5 stories, and it's kind of creature feature horror. There's a sci-fi in there. There's a couple of Lovecraftian horror, and there's a dark fantasy, almost like a Robert E. Howard style story in there as well. So it's a what I call the potpourri effect of
Take my money.
Yeah, these are
Right.
these are fun stories. They're accessible. I kind of like to think of it as this is the stuff you would have discovered on a spin rack 30 or 40 years ago, and you'd never heard of the author. But it's got cool art in it, and the stories kind of capture you and lead you all the way through. Stuff you don't have to think too much about is kind of what I like to write. So that's the latest that's out at this point.
Lord, then I need to hook
Nice.
you and Travis up. There will be two bees in the pod.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
My fiance is a comic book artist, and he absolutely loves horror, fantasy, anything like that.
Well, sounds like my kind of guy.
As soon as you're talking 30, 40 years ago in a spin rack, and I'm like, am I hearing him from out in the other room?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of us that are a certain vintage that just love that kind of stuff, right? So, you know, I used to kind of think when I started writing, I've got to write more heady, you know, traditional literature, and tried that terribly and just could never get past the first few pages because it just didn't hold my attention. So finally, I guess I grew up by not
hold your own then.
Yeah, it doesn't hold my own. So I grew up by not growing up and just embracing the 10 or 12-year-old kid in me and saying, well, what kind of stories do you really want to write? And that's the kind of stuff I like to write. So thus that is what I write.
That's kind of how things came about for me too. It's like, well, this isn't how I was typically told to write, but screw it. It's not 15 years ago anymore.
Well, yeah, but my memory is they got a ruler and they're standing over and you slap your fingers if you don't do right. So you got to do it the right way.
I remembered the punctuation. That's what mattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm old enough to have been through typewriting class. So,
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember using a typewriter when I first started out. We didn't have a computer, and I'm also remember even in high school, typewriters were gone. We were fully into computers at that point, but like typing class was a big thing. Like it was like, if you want to get a job, you need to learn to type 60 words a minute at basic, and this is the only way to do it. And you would do it for like an entire semester or two. And now I wonder, like, I don't know the answer, but I'm like, do typing classes exist anymore? Because everybody just kind of can, you know, type out 60 words per minute on their thumbs, let alone their fingers.
You need to
They
type
do not
that
exist
fast.
anymore.
You've got to make sure that your resume is exactly how they taught you in school, and you're absolutely going to need algebra.
Yeah, algebra. Right. And so
Kids start out on computers.
Yeah. Funny story there. My day job is running basically a financial institution, and I have intro to mathematics 11 is my highest form of math. And I love telling people that because, you don't actually need a lot of math, a lot of that upper class math to get a decent job in this world.
Not nowadays any. I mean, I was always horrible at math. Can't stand any of it. And I worked at a financial institution for many years, and I was like, nope, I ain't got to know crap. I got a calculator right there, and the computer does it all for me. As long as I can go back and be like, that matches that. All right, we're good.
Yep.
I do algebra all day, every day. I can't believe I actually use it.
What do you use it for?
So you're not gonna need to know what off the y axis equals x.
I have to transpose glasses prescriptions
Oh,
from an
okay.
optician. Yeah.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
can do plus seal form or minus seal form, and I have to be able to transpose those. And you do that algebraically.
Well, that makes sense. And I just learned something new. I had no idea that that's kind of how that works. So awesome. Good for you.
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
I'm terrible at math.
My joke is I'm one class, Algebra 2, away from my bachelor's degree, and I will never have it at 56. So it's not
my
gonna
gosh.
happen. It's true story. I have one college credit, Algebra 2, and I failed it twice and said, you know what? I don't need a bachelor's degree that damn bad.
Yeah, you don't
Oh my
sound that
gosh.
sad about it. So, so what, right?
No. And you know what? In my time as a paramedic firefighter for 30 years, I never used it. So
There you go.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
don't
I mean,
need it.
there's math involved with every job, obviously, for dosages and if you're going to put water at an elevated platform, how much pressure, stuff like that. But
That's
it's
more science. I feel like
learned
that
common
yours would
sense
be
things,
more.
so.
It would be more scientific, I think, than.
Mhm.
Well, the math is the hard part for drug dosaging, but other than that, and once you get it's an algebraic formula in your head, you can do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's just muscle memory.
Yeah.
So,
I was
like,
just gonna say.
and Joel, like I found what I wanted to do early in life and decided I didn't really need that stupid degree to start with. So,
Yeah.
it was what I love to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I floated around for a little while after high school and college. I thought maybe I'd study history and become a history professor. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to go the academic route. And so I worked for a while, and then I ended up going back, and I was like, well, I love writing. And so I had the brilliant idea of, well, maybe if I become a journalist, that'll lead to a publishing career. So I went and got a degree in journalism and graduated into the Great Recession when the journalism, like the industry around media, was completely collapsing and changing. So I did have a career as a reporter for a little while, and it was fun. But again, it was a writing career. I enjoyed it, but it did not lead to publishing fiction in any way, shape, or form. And one of the great lessons I got from it is when you're writing for pay all day long, you don't really want to come home at night and write some more. At least I didn't. So I had to get into a different career to finally find my way back to exploring fiction.
Be able to enjoy it.
Yeah. Breaking news every day was, its own adrenaline rush in its own way, and was a meaningful career, but it was not conducive to wanting to write horror stories. Or maybe it was, now that I think
Just
on it.
in a bit of a
Depends upon your
more
historical
traditional sense.
Yeah.
What was your first book, and how did you stumble into getting it? Almost stumble. That's not correct. That sounds degrading. But how did you get your first one out there, and how were you brave enough to get your first one out there?
Not degrading at all. It's a good question. So my first book was Wolf at the Door. It's a novella. It's a horror comedy. It's about a Canadian Thanksgiving, which is in October. Mm-hmm. In Canada, and a family gets together, and it's kind of like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, meal, where everybody's got beef with one another, and it all blows up around the turkey and the dinner table. And that's Act 1. And then Act 2 is when werewolves break into the house and start ripping everybody to shreds. And
so it's like half National Lampoon, half I lost my train of thought on what that werewolf movie was. They're all stuck in the cabin, and I have to look it up. Dog Soldiers. It's like
Dog Soldiers. Yeah, it's a bit like Dog Soldiers. Yeah, for sure. And that so that came to me during, like, probably you've heard this story many times. It was during the first wave of the pandemic, and I'd already been writing short stories for a little while, and then I was stuck in this room. All of our team was working remotely because, of course, we couldn't be in the office with all the COVID restrictions. And so I was trying to run an organization remotely, and I was going a little bit nuts. And I had this question in my mind around, what happens to people when they go from first world problems to real world problems, and how could you manifest that in a story? And and could you make it kind of fun and ridiculous and absurd? And so I started writing it, and I wrote it over about 3 weeks, and then I didn't really know what to do with it. And I sent it to an editor, and he gave me some good advice, and I changed a few things, but he said, I love it, get it out there. And at the time, there wasn't really any calls for short horror novellas to be published. There seems to be more of them now, just in the last year or two. So I went the self-pub route on that one, which was in part because I had been published by other publishers for short stories and stuff, but I also kind of wanted to learn the business. I wanted to know what went into creating a book, like formatting, cover, marketing, all those things. I'm naturally interested in business anyway, and it gave me a lot of creative control over it. So I went that route, and I don't regret it. It did well, and I learned a lot from it, and I'm quite proud of it. So it's still out there and can be found on Amazon, and that ultimately led to me doing the second book the same way, which is It Came from the Trees. So I'm a bit of a hybrid author that way. I've been traditionally published as a journalist many times, and then traditionally published with short stories. And then my longer stuff more recently has been self-pubbed. So I think probably a lot of people are going that way these days, is you're not sticking to one path. And it's fun.
Well, and
That's awesome.
not everybody has just that one interest too.
Yeah.
You've got, you've got the horror stories lingering in your brain, then you've got, something that's better suited for a comic, or this one's more comedic, this one's more romantic. You've got to put all your ideas out there.
Yeah, I think so. I think at the end of the day, for me, it would be lovely if one of my books sold 1 million copies and I could just do this full time. I think any creator would say that. But really, I'm just in it for the work. Like, I love creating, I love writing, I love creating. And so I just want to get the stories out there instead of them sitting in a shelf, at home, and slowly build an audience and hopefully find some success over a long time with it. I realized years ago, I'm never going to stop writing. It's like breathing for me. So I might as well, enjoy it and choose different pathways for, as you say, the different type of stuff that you come up with. These days it's horror and a bit of dark fantasy, but who knows where it'll be, 5 or 10 years from now. It might be something completely different, or a different medium entirely.
Have you always been a horror fan?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. And it's weird because as a kid, I got scared super easy. So I have some pretty distinct memories of seeing horror movies way too young. And it really, really screwed me up. But probably, one of the gateways to horror for me, there was a few over time. I mean, like so many people, Goosebumps and Spooksville, Ghostbusters were kind of horror light. It was almost cozy horror that you could kind of get into as a kid. And then where I grew up in Vancouver, I grew up when X-Files was being filmed, had just started being filmed there. And so you would travel around town and you would see them filming it. And so you'd watch it. And I became an X-Files fan. I'm an X-Files fan to this day. I've always loved the sort of creature and sort of anthology style stories. And they did a really good job of that. And then as I
assume Twin Peaks probably too.
Yeah. Anything set in the Pacific Northwest, I always, because it's home for me. Absolutely love it. And so from there, it just kind of grew, and it's not even it's a conscious choice. There's been times where I kind of laugh, and I'm like, if you wanted to make money as a writer, probably horror's not the genre you would pick first. But you'd pick something more maybe generalized. But it picked me, or I picked it. I don't know what happened. So it's a lifelong passion. The other one next to that for me is fantasy. I'm a big fan of high fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing too. And I think I find a lot of people who are into horror are also fantasy fans, and occasionally I like to blend the two.
Well,
yes, and sci-fi.
You were saying earlier, a lot more in the last couple years. I think if there were more horror-based, novels being put out, horror has become much more of a feel like we're going back in like the 90s with how big horror was for people.
Yeah, I think it seems to be a resurgence both in film and in written form too in horror right now. It's really nice to see. I mean, it's like anything, it kind of goes in waves, but I remember somebody saying years ago, at least maybe it's true of only of horror movies, I'm not sure, but like horror never really goes out of style. Like fantasy and sci-fi seem to kind of go through bigger waves where you will see them for a while and then they'll disappear. But horror, I think, is like romance in the sense that there's just always an inborn audience. There's always a desire for people to, have a thrill or a scare, just as there's, a desire for people to, experience, love and affection and what that looks like. And so in that way, it seems like a pretty consistent thing. But it's funny because, I'll be in my day job, running, a public sector institution like I do, and looking the way I do, and somebody say, "Oh, what do you do for fun?" I say, "Oh, I write horror," and they're kind of like, "What?"
No, I play golf.
Yeah, I should be like, "Oh, I go to the tennis club, Thursday nights, and whatever else, and wear a sweater tied around my neck and that kind of thing." But no, that's as you can see, that's not actually me. The real me is this guy on the wall behind me, who somehow accidentally found himself with a day job running a public sector institution. I should have actually just stuck to my guns in my 20s and I'd be way ahead writing fiction. That's what I should have done.
Sounds very similar to myself.
What's your favorite horror movie?
It's going to be John Carpenter. So for me, probably The Thing, his version of it. I'm a huge fan of The Fog, and his version, not the one that came out around 2000.
Right.
And I love In the Mouth of Madness. But I would say not my favorite, but like must see, must watch, every 2 years, kind of like how every Christmas I watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy, is The Shining, because it's just so beautiful and masterfully put together, and absolutely it's so terrifying. And I love the book too, which is very different, but the movie itself is incredible. How about you folks? What are your favorites? I'd love to know.
I think, Amanda, didn't you and I have like the same
I believe so. Older is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
Newer is The Conjuring universe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are good. Very good.
I love The Shining too, though.
Yeah,
I would go with like The Ring. That one terrified me for a different reason.
Yeah.
It's funny because the type of person that I am, I have to really, really, really want to watch something different. As a lot of the times I'll just sit and watch the same movies because I'm like, this is comfortable for me. I know I'm going to like it. I can just do whatever I'm doing and listen to it in the background. And there was just one day that I was like, you know what? Screw what Travis says. I'm going to watch The Shining because I want to watch it. Because typically he's pretty good at it. If he likes something, I know I'm not going to like it. So then he can probably suggest me something to watch that I will like. But he's like, no, don't waste your time watching it. You're going to think it's boring. And one day I was just playing movies and I played it and I was like, this is like the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weirdly like my comfort movie.
Yeah. No, I get it actually. Yeah. It has that quality to it. It would be a horror movie. You know how like when you watch Blade Runner, you turn up the volume and turn down the lights because you really want to hear the music. Like it's not just what it looks like, it's how it sounds and how it makes you feel. The Shining is like that for me. Like The Shining,
just be like, I don't get how you watch that over and over again. It's so boring. Yeah. And I was like, no, but it's just the ambiance is good.
It is. Yeah, every scene is just masterfully created from an audio visual perspective. It's quite a movie. My opinion.
Rest in peace, Shelley Duvall.
Yes. Yeah. She did, and in my opinion, I know people have criticized her over the years for her role. I always thought she was excellent in that role. Like just totally embodied the terror of the situation and really genuine too. So
definitely. Even the opening scene, I remember when I was younger, I walked into the room and it was just the opening scene of the trees and the car driving down the road. And I said, "Oh, The Shining's on." And my mom was like, "How do you know it's The Shining just from this?"
Yeah.
I was like, "You can just tell by the way it looks."
The way it looks,
Yeah.
the music, the opening font.
Yeah.
They don't make movies like that anymore, really. I mean,
No.
And they shouldn't, because you watch in a couple of years, somebody's going to try to do a remake of it.
Oh,
again.
They did,
Again.
yeah.
Yeah, they remake everything to death. You know, but we pay to go see it. Look at how many times I went to see Uncle Ben die.
Yeah.
Come on, so
Yeah.
That's
same
why
movie, but it
when
went 3
someone
times.
when someone asks what my favorite horror movie is, I say older and newer, because it's almost like it's 2 totally different genres. Like,
Yeah.
horror movies just aren't what they used to be. Like, we watch Svengoolie every Saturday night just to get that old horror movie in for the
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
Because I
And
love
there's-
Vincent Price.
The Conjuring universe, though, has so much going on, though.
Hmm.
Because then
I
it's like,
love
all
it.
right, well, I've watched the first one. Now I got to go watch The Nun.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Joel, one of our viewers wants to know if you believe in, or what do you think about Bigfoot?
Well, let me tell you, coming from British Columbia, the land of Sasquatch, which is typically what it's called or referred to in this province. So I actually, I'll preface this by saying, so I live in northern British Columbia. So I live in a city called Prince George, and northern British Columbia is about the size of France, and it only has about 300,000 people in it, and a lot of mountain ranges and a lot of places to get lost, and it's home of very large ungulates and carnivores. And I'm a fly fisherman in my spare time and a hiker, so I spent a lot of time out in the wilderness, and I've seen some weird things here and there that I can't really explain. But I've never seen Bigfoot. I've never seen signs of Bigfoot. What I do know is there's in Alberta, between Banff and Jasper, there is a lot of stories of Bigfoot sightings in that area that are not that old, from a lot of different people that ring truer to me than some of the other stuff I've heard. And I was fortunate about 14 or 15 years ago. I spent a couple of days out on a reserve in a part of British Columbia called Agassiz in the Fraser Valley with the Teases First Nation. And their symbol as a First Nation is Sasquatch. And for them, it's not a scary monster. If you run across a Sasquatch, the way they explained it to me, and I'm probably butchering this, so I apologize if anybody is from Teases and I've gotten this wrong. It's like a good luck if you happen to come around. It's a good omen if you come across one. And so when I was out there, I sat down with the chief and asked him about it, and he had told me that I think his brother was in the room at the time. His brother had come across one up Harrison Lake, which isn't that far from Vancouver at one point in time, and they told me the story. So I've never seen one. There's a long history of the stories. I mean, there's a part of me that's like, I don't think it's real, and then there's a part of me that's like, well, why wouldn't there have been, a North American ape at some point in time? Like that adds up. And I do know, there's a lot of land, at least in British Columbia, that is, not many people have spent time in. So the question is, so what do I think? I've relayed some stories. I don't know. Maybe it's out there. I'm one of those people, I guess, because I am a horror author, that loves to live in the unknown and the mystery and just kind of, not have an answer. Maybe it does exist. Maybe it is out there. And that's kind of cool to me. So that's my long-winded diatribe on that.
Well, no, I mean, when you're out there fly fishing and you're relaxed and then something weird happens, out of the ordinary, you're like, okay, I need an explanation for that. And sometimes you just can't explain it.
Yeah, no, you can't. There's times, I mean, I think you get this in the city too, but it's different because there's so much ambient noise and there's people around. But there's times in when you're in the outdoors where, like, I'll go for a hike and the energy feels good, and you're like, you know what? I know I'm not going to run into a grizzly bear today or a black bear. I just know it. I don't know how I know that. I'm just not worried about it. And then there's other times when you're out and just the energy is different. You get a different feeling, and you're like, something's off.
I should go back inside.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but something is off. It's making me anxious or nervous. I'm going to be extra careful, or I'm not gonna go do this. And it's like this instinctual thing. And I've talked to a lot of people who spend far more time than I do out in the wilderness, because it's a popular way to pass time in this part of the world. And they kind of say the same. There's an instinctual feeling when you're out there of just something. If something's off, there might be something off, and, you know, be careful around that. And it doesn't have to be anything monstrous. It's just, there's a lot of things that live out in the forest that you don't see. Like, we know, for example, around here, there's a lot of cougars. You never see them, right?
Yeah.
You never see them, but they're out there. And so it kind of makes you wonder.
They see you.
They see you. Yeah, they absolutely do. Right.
Now, do you live in a more rural area, or are you more in the city?
We're right in the city, so it's an interesting town. There's about 80,000 people here, so it's a good sized town. It has Costco and a university and all that. But it's there's nothing around it for at least an hour in any direction. In Canada, we measure distance by how long it takes to drive between places. So
yeah, we do that too.
You do that too? Okay, cool. So so you'd have to drive an hour to get to the next town, and the next town would be, 10,000 people or 5,000 people direction, depending on the direction you're going, or it could be a couple hours away. So it really is this cool city that's only halfway up the province, and it's completely in the forest and surrounded by wilderness. So you have a city lifestyle here, and it's as urban and suburban as any other place that you'll find, but drive 15 minutes and you're out in it. So that's I always say it's kind of the place that, and we get real winters here too. If you like the outdoors art culture, then this is a great place to be. But if you're looking for, arts and culture as sort of your main lifestyle, then you're not going to get the same experience you would in a big city. Doesn't mean we don't have it. We certainly do. It's just not at the same scale.
I was going to say, I think all of us can attest to, like, with what you were saying of, you can't see anything out there, but you can feel it. Because, like, where I live out of holler, you can most certainly feel it and it's also far too silent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our previous guest, he was talking about whistling, and I meant to say something. There's a story in Appalachian folklore where you don't want to go out in the woods whistling, that you could attract something that you don't want.
I've heard that, actually. Yeah. Don't whistle at night, right? Is, I think, the old saying. Yeah, I've heard that. And wouldn't it be creepy if you were out camping alone in the woods at night sometime, and you're sitting by your fire, it's crackling, and you don't hear anything, and then suddenly in the distance you hear somebody with a clear whistle, just whistling a tune.
Yeah, I was gonna say, then you know what it is.
That would be
then.
creepy.
Yeah. Wendell asks if you have ever heard any howling while you were out in the woods.
Yeah, lots. Not from werewolves, but from wolves. So we have we have quite a few wolves in this part of the world, big ones. And so you will occasionally you just come across them when you're out, and I've had that happen. But we don't get coyotes up here, but we will get big packs of wolves, 40 or 50 wolves, and
wow.
You can be out and you can hear them howling in some places at times. It doesn't happen all the time. And you got to spend a lot of time outdoors, but at night, I remember one time I was canoeing down in Bowron Lakes, which is about 2 hours southwest of here. And it's a provincial park, and it's very remote. And we were camping one night, and it was a clear summer night. And all of a sudden you could hear just this high-pitched pack of wolves just howling in the distance off. It wasn't scary. It was gorgeous. Like just
Yes.
like one of those things where you're like, wow, we're out in it now. I can really feel sort of the world coming alive around us. It was pretty neat.
Yeah. We live in the middle of nowhere on the Kentucky River,
Oh
and
yeah.
we have coyotes. So you can sit out on our deck at night and listen to the coyotes howl, and we find deer parts all over our farm where they
bet you
get a
do.
hold of the deer. So it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it is. Rural living's fun.
We've got the coyotes. You might have to worry about a bobcat.
Mhm.
Typically, if it gets that quiet, you're more than likely looking at a bear coming upon you. But
Yeah.
We get bears down here along the river. They've been
Yeah.
spotted down here.
Are they black or grizzly or?
I think for us, it'd
Not
be black bears.
grizzly. I think black bears, yes.
It's all usually black bears in our part of the world.
Mhm.
Even
Yeah.
at my mom's, when I go visit there, she's just on the outskirts of Knoxville, Tennessee, in the rural area, and we've had run-ins with bears, black bears. I mean, but they don't do anything more than like tear your bird feeders up or take your food or stuff like that. So,
yeah,
we get more damage out of the possums than anything.
Yeah, no, those we don't have up here. We do not have possums.
Oh,
You can have
lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so cold up there. You don't have snakes either, do you?
We do. We have garter snakes.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not snakes that bite. If you go a few hours south of us down into the Okanagan, you'll run into rattlesnakes. It's a desert down there. But up here it's garter snakes. And you don't get like venomous bugs up here really. We have wasps and hornets and stuff like that. So this part of the world, I mean, the winters are long, they're about 6 months. So it kills off that kind of thing. They can't survive up here. So really the only thing you have to worry about is the big animals and then the mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes depends on the year. Actually, this year's a really good bug year. Doesn't seem to be that many of them out there, but some years you got to coat yourself in DEET if you're going to be out hiking. Otherwise you get nailed.
Did y'all send the fleas and the ticks south then? They've been terrible this year.
I think the South is cursed. Well, we found snakes we've got snakes in our backyard this year, and I'm like, that hasn't happened in forever. So,
we have a huge black snake in our yard. Oh.
Well, Mom's side we do, but here I've never had but we do have here in our neighborhood. I don't know how we got off on this conversation, but we have a family of hawks. Oh. And it's been fascinating watching the parent hawks teach the baby hawk.
Yes.
And that sucker landed in the backyard yesterday, and thing's huge. It was the male, I guess, but it's huge. Yeah. I was just impressed with how big it was. I mean, you see it from the air and you think that's pretty big, but when it's standing there and it would be over my knee level, and I'm almost 6 foot. So they're big.
We see them here on the daily, but never that big.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Hawk's Nest, so.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I don't know. This is we live by a lake, so it's kind of neat seeing it. This is the first year we've ever had one, so it's kind of cool. During my funny story with that is during this eclipse, while everybody was out watching, for the eclipse, I was watching. The baby hawk was still learning to fly, and he flew down on a lower limb. And when the eclipse happened, he was confused. He didn't know how to get back to the nest, which was literally like up and over 3 trees. And I would assume, I'm just guessing here, Mama Hawk came down. This is how, this is giving me a whole new thought on animals, and put her wing around it. Like a mom would. And I was like, a bird did that. And that just amazed me. And then the other one was flying from that limb directly back to the nest, and it took and followed it. But seeing it give basically a virtual hug, because it was, I don't know what you call it, screeching. It was making unusual noise for a hawk, but it was a baby hawk, so I don't know what they sound like. But it was fascinating just to watch. Everybody else is looking at the eclipse, and I was watching that. So
yeah. That is pretty neat. We were out fishing at a lake last summer, a few hours south of here, and there was this bald eagle that was circling because it could see that we were pulling up trout, and
he's like,
we got one.
Mhm.
We got one and we shook it, and he came down, and we kind of, or she came down, we don't know, and we tossed it and grabbed it like 5 feet off the back of
Wow.
our little tin
Oh,
boat.
cool.
And yeah, it was
That's
pretty
so
neat.
cool.
Yeah, and I mean they're gargantuan too, like just huge. And
Yes.
we've got
That's
them
awesome.
everywhere here, all over the
Oh,
place.
wow. That's awesome.
I'd lose my crap.
We have
just
to,
pulling over. Just all right.
yeah, we have to go see them encaged in something here,
Yeah,
where they have them.
it was
Hey,
funny.
If you want to see vultures, we got plenty of vultures.
Yeah. Yeah, years ago when my eldest daughter was just a baby, she was 10 months old, and we went on holiday to a place called Haida Gwaii, which is an archipelago of islands off the northwest coast of British Columbia, just south of Alaska. And it's a rainforest, and it's full of bald eagles and all kinds of neat animals. It's called the Galapagos of North America because it's got all these unique animals on it. One day I was out in the yard right on the water, and I was letting my daughter kind of wander around in the grass, and I was sitting 20 feet away watching her. And I looked up, and there was about 20 bald eagles up in the trees, and they started circling around, and they were kind of calling to each other. And then I looked at my daughter, and I was like, I think this isn't good. I got to get her out of there because they might come down and grab her and take off with her. Yeah.
That one's pretty small. I bet we could get her.
Yeah. Oh, I think they could have if they wanted to, for sure. So I scooped her up and got out of there. Right. It was a bit of a lesson to be careful.
Honey, I think the eagles are plotting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the movie The Proposal where it takes off with the little dog.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
You could come up with some ideas for stuff right there. I mean, that would be a great story in itself.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Horrific for sure.
Your werewolves, are they human and they change, or are they constantly?
Yeah.
So
they were in that book. They were I mean, spoiler alert, it was a married couple who was supposed to come to the dinner party and miscalculated on their home calendar when they were going to change.
I love it.
Yeah, it's like stupid, right? Like really, really
Right.
stupid. But yeah, and so that kind of
gets turned into a movie, I feel like Ryan Reynolds needs to play the male role on that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Oops, but now we have dinner.
Yeah, exactly. They came for dinner anyway. Yeah.
He like looks at his watch and looks out the window and he's like, guys, I'm real sorry.
Yeah,
So I'm
sorry.
gonna eat you now.
Yeah, you screwed this up. Yeah.
I love it.
With all the comic books you got there behind you, what's your favorite comic book?
These ones?
Well, in general, I mean, you may have one that you don't have up. What's your favorite?
What would be my favorite? It would probably be one of these ones. I would say, oh, you know what? Hold on. I love this one. I love this one because it's just ridiculous. You can Archie meets the Punisher.
Great one,
Nice.
actually. Yes.
Right? Like how do you beat that? Right? I bought that when I was probably, I don't know, I was a kid and I bought that because I just thought it was hilarious at the time. And I've kept it ever since. And I guess it's turned into somewhat of a collector's item because it's so unique. But I just love that whole juxtaposition of it. I think it actually speaks to my sense of humor to some extent.
Well, they have a whole series where the Archies get wiped out. Predator, Archie Predator. That one was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was. It's stupid, like you say, but it's great at the same time. Yeah. You know what's going to happen, and you're like, I gotta.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta see it. Gotta see it. Yeah.
Great. Who's Arnold in the end of this? Come on.
Yeah, it's I like that. Yeah, that's funny because I'm a sucker for. I think they even did like a Sharknado one for Archie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That would be good. Archie seems like a really good comic, and its wholesome ridiculousness to like blend in with other things, right?
Something else equally ridiculous, but
something else, but also slightly horrific, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And for no apparent reason, I've discovered we have Sharknado 4. Was being filmed here in Atlanta. We're not even near the water.
Oh my gosh.
I still haven't seen it.
They made a Jersey Shore shark attack.
Did
where
they?
it was like all supposed to be faux Jersey Shore people, and then at the very end, Vinny shows up as a news reporter, and the shark just jumps out of the water and eats him over the boardwalk. And there was one that Travis and I found that was called Shark Exorcist.
I haven't heard of that one.
And the most god-awfully made movie. It was terrible. Because at the very beginning,
He's taking notes.
there's this woman in a nun costume who looks like she's conjuring something over the water, and the rest of the movie makes no sense in terms of it being Shark Exorcist, except for at some point, some woman who's laying on a bikini on her beach towel in the grass, nowhere near the beach, and some old guy is walking up and is like taking pictures of her, and you're like, how is she not noticing this? Horrible movie. Like, and Travis loves bad movies that he can rag on. And he's like, I don't even have anything to say about this. The whole time we're just like, this looks like somebody like in college had minimal budget to do a film for their film class, and then
filmed it on their iPhone or something like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So Joel, I imagine you like movies like Zombiever because it has the horror comedy together.
Yeah, I do. What was the one with the bear that got into the cocaine?
Cocaine Bear. That's
Cocaine Bear. Yeah, Cocaine Bear. I loved it. I thought it was
based on a true story.
Yeah, it's based on
here
a
in
true story,
Kentucky.
right? Yeah, and I mean the thing with that movie that I knew I was going to like it right from the beginning was the opening scene there with, I think it's Matthew Rhys, where he goes to jump out of the plane, and he basically hits his head on the way out, and then falls to his death. And I'm like, this is my jam. This is absolutely ridiculous, and I'm going to enjoy this the whole time.
If you ever get to come to Kentucky, we have Cocaine Bear. It's at Kentucky for Kentucky in Lexington.
Oh, really?
You can take a picture of him. What, Glenn?
It's in a mall, isn't it? Didn't they stuff it in the mall or something?
It's in a store called Kentucky for Kentucky in Lexington. They call it the mall, but it's not really a mall. It's just a store.
The more time that goes by, the more I think the U.S. South, it might just be the place for me. Like, like it's just, I think that's my vibe down there. Every time I meet people from Kentucky or Tennessee or the Carolinas or wherever, Georgia, I'm like, I like these people. These are my people.
Yes, definitely.
Well, you come down here, and a lot of people are going to want to hear you talk.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like ridiculous Canadian accent.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who's Canadian, and her and I used to talk to each other just so we could hear each other talk.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny. My parents live in South Idaho. They're in a town called Pocatello. So my mom's been down there for 20 years. And my stepdad, he's from there. So, he's got the American accent. My mom hasn't changed hers at all. She still sounds as Canadian as the day she was born. You'd think it would change over time, but not so much. But I've got family in Texas, and I got family in North Carolina. And they all have the accent, the American accent. I love it. And I love the different accents around the States. The Canadian accent, with the exception of Quebec and Newfoundland, which are very different, is kind of the same all the way across.
It's very Midwest. Like you can just fit right in with like Midwest.
You can. Yeah. I call it depending on where you are, like in BC and Alberta, it's not as pronounced, but you get into Saskatchewan and Manitoba, it starts to get pretty pronounced, and then the Maritimes, but it's like the, degrees of how much of a hoser are you. And you can tell by, like the different way that people accent their values and that kind of thing, right? That it's more just degrees of it than anything.
Or upstate New York, that works too.
Yeah,
I feel like my grandpa, I feel like sounds very Canadian. He's got that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, like Minnesota, right? The Minnesota accent is really just a Canadian accent. That's all it is, right?
The coldest I've ever been in my life, Red Deer, Manitoba. We were on a med flight there, and it was so cold when we landed, the pilots put it down a little bit too hard and blew the shocks. because the nitrogen didn't have as much absorption.
Yeah.
And so it popped the shocks when we landed. Because he'd never landed that far north and that far cold. It was -50.
Yeah.
And so that we got stuck there because in Red Deer, Manitoba, there are no Learjet mechanics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, true story. There's a TV show in Canada. Oh, what was it? Air Rescue or Air Ambulance or something. There's an episode that we're in it. The only mechanic in that section, because this company delivers the mail to the rural areas and the supplies and stuff. It's a flight company. The only mechanic was from that. And so they decided to make an episode about when they go rescue the air ambulance. And it was us.
Yeah.
That's great.
We were stuck up there.
Easy.
I'm sorry. I've been in Saudi. I've been in Kuwait, and it's been 120, 100 and plus. -50. There's nothing like it. Your eyes freeze.
There isn't.
And I was the idiot. I'm like, I'm from the South. Nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to try and have a cigar in this. Yeah, it didn't work.
No.
Didn't work at all.
Yeah, I've been in -52. I've experienced it in this part of the world. We don't get it much. We definitely get down to -40 every year for 5 or 6 days or whatever. Sometimes maybe a little bit more than that. But it's funny, like I figured it out because in Vancouver, where I'm from, like it doesn't really get below 0 and you don't really get snow. So it's pretty mild. It's like Seattle, right? And so I moved up here about 12 years ago and I had to get experience with winter. What I figured out is that in Celsius, 0 to -10 is balmy. -10 to -20, you got to dress for that. -20 to -30, you don't want to be out too long, but you can be out and you can still do things. -30, things stop working. Things break. -40, nothing works. Don't go outside. It's dangerous. The air is trying to kill you. And it only kind of gets worse from there. And actually it's at, I think, because I did the calculation because I'm a nerd, it's about -45 that Celsius and Fahrenheit line up with one another. So once you get there, it's actually the same temperature, and then it carries on from there. But that Manitoba winter is brutal because they have the wind. We don't have the wind here to the same degree because it's mountainous, but in the prairies, man, when it gets down to -50 and you got a wind, that's
even with it being mountainous with the wind like that, that's a lot of the times where it gets dangerous too. Like for us, like it could be like if you're right out in the sun, it's almost 100, but when you get back in all the cover, it's probably 80. And the breeze coming through is relatively cool. But then once it gets really cold and everything's frozen over, the wind going out there, you might as well just not even bother.
Yeah. I can believe it.
We landed, it was -50. It stayed around -50, and then a blizzard came in. So we were stuck there.
Yeah.
And this little tiny hotel, we had to go out, cross over railroad tracks and go to a truck stop. That was the closest place to get something to eat. And there was no transportation during the blizzard. And so we had to hike from the hotel to this truck stop. And we didn't even know what to order. I was like, just cheeseburger. I don't care. Just
something warm.
But I know I'm not going to take it back. I'm going to eat it here.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, it gets dangerous when it gets that cold. If you get, like if you get stuck out somewhere, like I do a lot of traveling for work in the winter on the highways, and you're always, even though you're driving along, you're always prepared. Like if something goes sideways, like you better have, your toque and your mittens and an extra coat and all these things, water, because like you get stuck somewhere for a long time. And we do check-ins too with people so that if you happen to be driving and it's colder than -20 out, because that's where it can kind of get dangerous, that you check in with people regularly so that, you don't go missing somewhere on the highway and then, you're suffering from hypothermia or something like that. So you got to be careful around it, but I'm pleased to hear that you have experienced a Canadian winter.
And then my son moved from Atlanta to Vermont. He's just outside of Canada. He's right there at the border of Vermont. And I'm like, why? He's like, I wanted to experience winter, Dad. He grew up here in the South. I'm like, You don't
You
understand.
had to pick Vermont.
He called me. Well, he took a job with a company, so he didn't do bad. He called me the first winter up there, and he said, "Hey, they're expecting us minor snow," and I'm like, "Oh, cool, you're gonna get some snow." He goes, 4 feet. And I'm like, "That's minor."
Yeah. That's minor. That's minor. Oh yeah.
He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, hope you got snow tires. I'm coming in July. That one weekend in July, you'll see me."
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been times where I've been out driving where, you know, you're coming through a mountain pass or something in a blizzard and you're pushing snow with the bumper of your truck, right? Just coming along. And the problem with that is that when you're driving along, you know, now the road's covered and you can't see, like, you're kind of gauging, like, okay, where's the shoulder here? Because you can get sucked in. Like, if you go too far off to the right, it looks like you're still on the highway. You're not on the highway. You're going to get sucked into a ditch. So you kind of have to aim it, right? I've had times, not even in a winter storm, but like winter time of year, where like the rocks and the dirt and the slush that's coming up from the big semis traveling in front of you, going down a hill, you can't see anything. You just follow the taillights and you just hope that they've got it right. So you just fall in their taillights down a hill and just hang back and hope to God that they don't jackknife or go off the highway, right?
My first winter here, I was working about 45 minutes away from home, which is farther south, but they are like more on top of the mountain. And they were like, all right, the weather's going to get bad. We're going to let you go ahead and go home now while we close everything up because we know you've got a longer ride to go. And we typically work till about 6, and they let me leave at 5. I didn't make it home until after 7 because the road was so bad. I was nearly tailgating a semi truck just so that I could figure out where the exit was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
scary.
that would definitely be one of those where you're like, no, screw it. The truckers don't know what's going on. And I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm doing 25 in a 60, and I'm not going any faster than that.
No, I've done the exact same thing. I've also used, in some circumstances, if I've been traveling at night, I've used the trucks as animal clearers. So, right, like you just hang back because, like, you know, if you hit a deer. This is all going to sound really, so I'm going to apologize to everybody before I say all of this for listening in. If you hit a deer, you're going to survive it. If you hit a bear, it's going to screw up your car depending on this, or your truck depending on the side. You'll probably survive it. If you hit a moose, what happens is it just comes. Yeah, you're hooped. It just comes right up on top and then it clears off the top of your vehicle, right? And that's the one that always bothers me because when they step out in front of you on the highway, I don't know if you have them down there, but they're gargantuan. They're just
so much bigger than you think they are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. They really, really are. And
angry. They're very angry.
They are. Yeah, I worry about running into moose in the woods as much, if not more so, than a grizzly bear, because you're hooped if you run into one and it's in the rut or something, right?
I've just seen like YouTube videos. Like there was one, a guy was trying to get it to move off the road so he could go around him, and the road was covered in snow, and that moose was chasing him around the car because he was trying to get the moose off the road. And I was like, it's huge. Is it just that one moose?
Yeah, they're huge.
And then, no, I was just like, it's like thing's like as big as a camel.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. It in some cases bigger, a big bull moose.
Yeah.
I mean, they're quite an animal for sure.
Yeah.
And they wander out on the highway. So that's the other issue. Like it is not uncommon.
They know you're not gonna F with them.
Yeah, they just kind of carry on, right?
Yeah, when I was in Alaska, we had to wait for a whole family of them to cross the road just to go.
Yeah, that's where you'd run into the truly large ones would be up there, no question. Right?
Yeah.
If you got a mama with the babies around there too, then you better be.
That's what it was. Yes. So we just stopped and we were like, okay, go on.
Yeah, get out of there, right?
Go a little further south here, you got the alligators. So there's something in all parts of the country that'll get you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that fascinates me actually. Like what it must be like to live in a place that has alligators just creeping around in the waters. Like that to me is wild, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a friend moved to Orlando. They moved into like a subdivision. It was just a normal subdivision. And when they signed all the paperwork, there was paperwork explaining don't let your animals out at night, don't leave any food out at night. And it's like, why? I was like, because of the alligators. The alligators will come up at night and they will get into the food, they'll get into the trash, they'll kill your chihuahua.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. We were in Florida and my son asked if he could swim in this little spot and I was like, yeah, sure. So he goes in and I was like, just stay close by here and you'll be fine. And I start backing up so I can sit in the grass and I see a sign and I was like, oh, what's this sign? And it says, swim at your own risk, alligators. And I was like,
get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that in the lakes up here. As long as the ice is off and you're fine. Like, you know, it's trout, you know, so you don't really have to worry about that. Right? So, yeah.
I have ichthyophobia, so I wouldn't like that very much either.
No, okay. Well, there you go.
Joel, we have ventured so far off, but gosh, this has been great. Maybe we've given you some ideas for some new horror stuff. You never know.
One or two. Yeah, for sure. No, I've really enjoyed
Killer
it.
fish.
Yeah. Before we let you get out of here, Joel, because we don't want to keep you, we only like to keep a guest just about an hour. Tell us where we can find you, where we can get your stuff, and anything new you got upcoming, and if you want to come back, if you liked us. So,
would love to come back. This was a ton of fun and a bright spot of my day. So thank you very much. You can find me on the usual socials. So on X or Twitter, Joel C. McKay, LinkedIn, Joel C. McKay, Instagram, author_Joel_McKay, and same with Threads. And then you can find my stuff on Amazon. And you know, just Google my name, and you'll find me pretty easily and my stuff. So thanks for the opportunity to come on. It's been a real highlight and fun.
It has, and we ventured way out, but hey, we had a good time. We enjoyed getting there.
That's what matters.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, if you come up with any really good ideas from our show, you got to come and give us exclusive. So
yeah, it sounds like there's like a 10 or 15% management fee that's going to get paid down into the U.S. South. I'm cool with it. It's all good.
I will forward you the contract.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, she's my secretary. So
yeah, right on.
Have a wonderful
we'll collaborate on the first world problems. I got a comic for that.
There you go. There you go.
I appreciate your time. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, that was great. I didn't think we would get to alligators.
Right, he was so fun.
Yeah,
it was. So I enjoyed that.
Canadian accent.
I enjoyed that. That was fun. Well, and that was good to hear that we were the bright spot in his day. So that makes you feel good. You know? So I don't know what time it was there. I hope we didn't keep him up too late. So, but yeah, that was fun.
That was definitely the bright spot of my day.
Both of them were great.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It was a great show. So,
yes.
Well, Cheyenne, are you going to be anywhere soon, or? I
will be here.
All right. Well, and Amanda, you got anything coming up? You helped get one of our guests next week, didn't you?
Yes, Zodiac.
Yes.
Is that next week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 or 10. I can't remember which, but yes. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. I've known him for
that'll
many years.
Can't wait.
About 22 years we've been friends.
You ain't that old, so.
Yeah, we've known each other since we were like 3.
There you go. All right. Well, in case you don't know it, we have a Big Brother radio show about the TV show. We will be live tomorrow night around 10:30, and I think we got lots to talk about because there's lots of crazy in that house. So we'll be there. And then Saturday, have you got anything lined up for us yet, Cheyenne?
Not yet, but I did want to mention something about the Big Brother thing. I read something today. Are the times changing for the show? Isn't it 8 to 9 now?
Not that I'm aware. I think during football season it changes.
Because I was reading something in the group chat and had looked it up earlier, and I thought that people were saying that they were changing times for it. But
Yeah, they do change time during, I think, September 1st is the first week of football, or maybe spring training or whatever it is. And they do change because CBS has a contract with the NFL. So yeah, they will change. Yeah. And then I think the Thursday nights change to Wednesday nights when Thursday night football's. I don't know, but yeah, there is a change for football. So, and then Friday on the Great and Guardian Gang, man, I have some surprise stuff lined up there that y'all just got to see. So, Amanda, you are welcome there. So anytime you want to pop in there. And now Thanks. Diane, we're going to have to make her an honorary first responder. So
I'm working on becoming a medical assistant, so I guess that can count a little bit.
Counts for something. All right, well, let's wrap this up real quick. And everybody, we appreciate you tuning in. And remember to please come over to YouTube if you're watching somewhere else to the Sportcat shows. Like, follow, share, subscribe. I don't know, figure it out.
All the things.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. They told me my problem was I didn't ask enough. I thought I had to ask
once. You don't ask, you demand.
Yeah. I got a gun.
Like,
I'm holding it to the camera.
Right now.
Yeah, I gotta say I had a gun. I'll get kicked off of YouTube. I better turn this music up.
Crank it up, Glenn.
He'll do it.
That's right. Don't make me do it.